on ulica Mlynarska. In Polish, mlyn is a mill. But when we moved there, there was no mill anymore. So it's a very small street, only about 6 buildings. And so in other words, about ulica Ludzka is the main street. And to the left and to the right, there are perpendicular streets.
Okay.
So, Mlynarska, as I say, is a small, very small street. But the one before, ulica Wąska, Wąska in Polish means narrow. So ulica Wąska, Mlynarska, and then that Shepelit, another street.
And there were farmers.
And after that, there may be 2 more streets. There were. Of course, Manievichi now is much bigger. So there were maybe another 2 streets. And if you cross Ludzka, there was Geller's Pensionat and, Geller's Villa and a pensionat. And so what I'm trying to say, that there were very, very small streets, and I believe at that time the only Manievichi population was maybe 6,000 or 7,000. The way I understand now is about 20 or 25,000.
It's about 20, I think.
About 20. So Manievichi changed a lot.
So if it was 6,000 and there were 4,000 Jews, it was 2/3 Jewish.
Yeah, 2/3 Jewish. And there were some Ukrainians and some Poles. More Ukrainians than Poles. And this is why in 1939, the Russians had a pretense to take over this part of Poland, because they claimed that how can I say? The war started, in 1939, Poland was divided between Germany and the Soviet Union. Where we live, so the river, the tributary Bug, was the border between the parts which the Germans took over, and at the other side of the Bug River, it means that at the right side, the Russians took over, and it became part of the Ukraine, and Manievichi among them. And I still remember in Russian, like this, they said, 18 сентября рабоче-крестьянская Красная Армия перешла границу и взяла под свою защиту народы Западной Украины и Западной Беларуси. But it meant this in 1939, due to the fact that the Poland stopped to exist, they had a big reason to come and take over the area in order to protect the brothers, the Ukrainian. And also remember Ukrainian, the same thing in Ukrainian within. 18 вересня робітнича селянська Червона армія прийшла границю і взяла під свій захист народи Західної України і Західної Білорусі. Від этого дня навсегда закінчена експлуатація чоловіка человеком. So this is Ukrainian, and they said from that day there's no exploitation. The exploitation is gone forever. So I still remember that.
Wow.
So anyway, it's very interesting. You know, I was actually, can I say, I admitted to be better to the army because I worked this on a sovkhoz. I don't know if you know the difference, you know, sovkhoz and a kolkhoz.
I don't know what either of those are. What does that mean?
Anyway. So I was also a shoemaker, and there was a doctor who was my client. And whenever we came for the board, you know, she would say, I have some, she would ask me to run around a little and come in, and she would say, I have a bad heart. But then in 1944, and this is a true story, in 1944, she said, look, you have to be very careful because I will not be anymore on the breadboard. And sure enough, should have been in the army since 1941. Well, anyway, we trained in Uzbekistan for maybe 6 weeks, and then they took us by train It took us maybe 6 weeks to reach the area. And you'll never believe it. I was born in Rochelle, and we disembarked the train with maybe 1,000 or so soldiers, disembarked in Rochelle. I didn't like that.
And you're in the Soviet Army then?
Yeah. So I didn't know whether this was a good omen or a bad omen. But anyway, most likely it was a good omen because I survived.
Yes. There's a movie that I would love for you to see called The Lost Town. It was just produced, and it's about Trochenbrad, which is near Rajisha. Do you remember Trochenbrad? Trochenbrad.
Yeah, it sounds familiar. It's a very small...
It was one of the first shtetls, one of the very first. And it was a place that both the partisans and the Germans focused on because of its significance. And it's a story about the Jews of Trochenbrad and what happened there. But in the end, the partisans destroyed it, so that the Germans couldn't have it, and all that's left is a road.
See, my parents could have left. They could have left. Didn't want to. My mother said, we will have back like the club the afternoon. We will sleep the first night.
If you leave.
And if I wouldn't have attended a Ukrainian school, I would have never left. My mother, she rest in peace, she said, Chaim, you always with your schooling and I have to leave us. So Germany attacked the Soviet Union the 22nd of June in 1941, and I left Manievichi the 26th, and the Germans came in the 27th. So I was afraid to remain there, not because I was a Jew, but because I attended a Ukrainian school. And the Germans were very, how can I say, they couldn't stand the Bolsheviks, and they couldn't stand the Jews, unfortunately. So I was afraid they'll say this, I'm a communist, and this is why I left Manievichi. Otherwise, I would have never left.
And
why did I attend a Russian school? Because in Poland, up to the 7th grade was free, called Szkola Powszechna. Now, after the 7th grade, used to be called gymnasium, but you had to pay for it. And there was no gymnasium in Manievichi. And my father was just a tailor. He had 5 children. And in Poland, there wasn't such a thing as the wife should go and help out. The wife cooked. She was a cook and raised children. So anyway, my father could not afford to send me to Kovel or Sarna, which are the biggest. Kovel is to west, Sarna is east, and to pay for room and board and tuition. But then, when it became part of the Ukraine, they opened up a high school because they needed it for their children. But there's a different system. They're up to from the 1st grade up to the 10th. And once you graduate from the 10th grade, it's like here high school. So if I wouldn't have attended a Russian school, Ukrainian school actually, I would have never left. So in a way, it worked out good that my father could not afford to send me to...
Saved your life.
That's right, to save me, because just my father could not afford to do it.
So you had 4 siblings?
I had, 4 siblings. I had my older brother, Simcha Wolf. I think he was born in 1912. And he actually helped my father tailoring. In 1941, he was mobilized to the Red Army. And I don't know what happened to him.
That's what happened to Sheppa's brother, Shaul. Same time, he went with Shaul.
Yeah, so anyway, I assume he's not alive. Why? Because he was the only one to write to my uncle in Kansas City. I was still too young to write. He was the only one to write. He was the one to write to my uncle in Kansas City. So if he would have been alive, he would have written to them. So I assume, he got killed. And then I had a sister, Hannah, and she was married. She was married. She gave birth to a baby girl, and she was taken to the ghetto. And then my father, I think it was my father, and it was the first one to die in 1941. The way I understand, there were a group of 70 Jews, but I heard otherwise. You say there were more than 70.
275.
Okay, so
475.
So they took him to work, and he never came back.
Yeah, all the men and all the boys, and you can read about it in the memorial book I sent you. That's how I know.
I did read it.
Yeah.
So
that's.
And then I had twin brothers. They were born in 1930, and nobody knows. I cannot say nobody. Kovalchuk, the daughter of the Ukrainian neighbor, she knew where my mother was and my sister was, and she claimed she helped them. Who knows? Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. But she did not know what happened to my twin brothers. So they were at that time 11 years old. Now 11 years, so possible, it used to happen. Sometimes they used to give them away to a Polish family, or to a Russian, or to a Ukrainian family.
To hide them.
To hide them, and many times. But I think 11 years old, they would know they were Jewish. No, 11 years, I think they would have. But nobody knows what happened to them.
Well, there was the second killing with over 3,000.
I understand.
And they could have been in that roundup.
I understand. But she knows my mother wasn't there. My mother and my sister were in the second roundup.
You know that.
Yeah, but I, as I said, I do not know, nobody know. I mean, how can I say? My neighbor's daughter, she does not know what happened to my twin brothers. And I found out actually when we disembarked in Rochelle, then my mother had a sister in Rochelle. But we disembarked just maybe a few kilometers from Rochelle. And so the next day I went to the lieutenant, and I said, my mom had a sister in Rochelle, and I would like to go, and that I was in the army. I would like to go and visit her. He said, what are you looking for trouble? The Germans are maybe 6 or 8 kilometers from here. But I was a young man, I didn't care. So I'll tell you what you do. Take your friend and take all of your rifles, and they gave us a map, and go to Manievichi. You go to Rochelle. And he said, but make sure you come back before it gets dark. So we had it was maybe 2 kilometers or so, and on the way we met a young Jewish woman, a lady, and she was selling bread, she was selling candles, she was selling, what else did she say? Matches. And I told her, when I told her I'm from Manievichi, she said, there's actually somebody here from Manievichi, he was in the partisan. He'll be back in about an hour or so. Okay, so meanwhile, we went to Rochelle, we found Rochelle, and we found the street in Polish. It was called Ulica Zwycięstwa. And when we got there was no street anymore, everything was burned. So we headed back, and then the partisan was there. His name was, actually is mentioned in the book, Shmerel Zafran. Shmerel Zafran.
Sounds familiar.
Sounds familiar. And he wore a pajama uniform. And we got scared, my friend and I. So we have the rifle. He said, no, this is Shmerel Zafran. He just wears a German uniform. So he told us about the second time, what do you call it, when they killed the Jews Manievichi. And he said, they gave Rabbi Gordon, they gave a half an hour to speak to the congregation before they shot him. So he So this is most likely the mass grave which you are talking about.
Mhm.
And he said his friend and him decided to run. So he was able to make it, and the other guy, he mentioned the name, I don't remember, was shot and killed him. So he told me that, and I knew this nobody remained from my family in Manievichi, so I almost remained in the Soviet Union. You'll ask why? Because I figured I never knew that I'd be able to immigrate from Poland, and I like the Russians much better than the Poles. As a Polish citizen, I was able to go back to Poland because I was born in Poland. But anyway, to make this story short, when they formed, and this I was that time in Uzbekistan, near Andijan, Uzbekistan. So anyway, when the Polish representative, notified me that when the echelon or whatever is leaving for Poland, I said, I'm not going to Poland. He said to me, you'll be sorry. I said, well, I'm not going. But then I saw the reason why, as I said, I didn't notice I'd be able to immigrate from Poland. But then when I saw this everybody's leaving, I said, am I smarter than everybody else? So then when I decided to go, he said, you are not going. So I was illegal on the train. I have so many stories.
I bet you do.
And so anyway, so when the train left there's a town Andijan in Uzbekistan. The train left maybe 1,200 people, all Polacks, Polish Jews, and I got there and I got on the train. Maybe halfway or so, the Polish representative saw me. I said, what are you doing here? I said, I'm not going to Poland, I'm going to the Ukraine. Manievichi is now part of the Ukraine. So I went to complain. So on the train, there were Polish representatives and Russian representatives. Of course, the Russian representatives had more to say than the Polish one. And he complained that I'm illegal on the train. So they called me. So I said, look, I told them the story, and I said, I'm going to Manievichi. I'm not going to Poland. Besides, I fought for the fatherland, for Russia, and I'm not going to Poland. I'm going to the Ukraine, which was a lie. So he said to me, how do you, I didn't get any food on the train. So he said to me, how do you do without food? I said, sometimes I buy, sometimes I don't. So he said to me, you know something, whenever you're hungry, just come to me. There were about 3 Russian officers, come to me. And so they always gave me food. And to the Polish representative, he said, u nas parovoz harosh, on potianit. What it means, we have our engine, our locomotive, is a strong locomotive, she'll take another person. Okay. So this is the story. Then we got to the Polish border. So I didn't have any document. But God was kind of always with me. So the train reached the Polish border, was starting to get dark. So stopped at the border, and they started to check each one a document in Russian and Polish. So when they checked the passengers on the train, there was a Russian representative and a Polish representative. The Russian representative took a half of the document in Russian, and the other half they gave to the so-called passenger, which I was one. So I was actually in the last, I figured, let me be in the last car of the train. It was maybe, I don't know, maybe 40 cattle cars. So anyway, when they were in the car before the last, I jumped off the last car and make believe I had to pee or something. And then I waited. So then they started actually to check to check from the end. And once they checked over, I got back on the train. So we are now in Poland, and the train keeps going, keeps going west, keeps going west. So it stopped in a town called Tarnów, which is not far from Krakow. Krakow is known to be a old medieval city. So, I don't know, as I say, like they say, it was Bashir. It was a nice day, and the door was open, and I was standing at the doorway. So three young men, one girl and two young men came over, and they said, Yiddish, Ayid. I don't know, they recognized me. They said, you know, we have a kibbutz here. Why don't you get on the train, and you'll stay in the kibbutz. You know, we have a group maybe about 35 people, and you know, we have a great time. And the way I understand, it was actually how can I say, you need money for that. You need money, you know, the kibbutz. You need money. You have to pay for the building or so. The way I understand that it was actually paid with American Jewish money.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, we were there about 6 weeks, and then they took us about 6 weeks. They took us by train to the border of Czechoslovakia, and we were told not to speak any Yiddish, just not to be like in a group, because even that time the Poles were taking off Jews on the train and shoot them after the war. So then we didn't have to actually, how can I say, cross the border illegally. They took us in the Polish army trucks took us to the border, and then the Czechs took us in their trucks to Bratislava. Now Bratislava, that time was still Czechoslovakia. Now we have a Czech Republic and a Slovak Republic. So they took us to Bratislava, and we were there, a Jewish place, like a Jewish ride. We were there maybe a week or so, and then they took us by train to Austria, and from Austria they took us to Germany, to U.S. zone in Germany. First they took us to a small town in Kam, and I still remember we slept in tents, and we're talking about maybe 800 people, so 800 Jewish people. And then I remember they used to come with a truck and actually almost throw breads and pass some bread. Oh my God! When I was you know, during the war, bread tasted better than cake. So anyway, then they took us to Wetzlar. Wetzlar is known because they make the Leica there. And until not long ago, when Japan started to make the cameras, it was the best camera in the world. It still is, I think. So I was on a DP camp in Wetzlar, displaced person camp, supported by UNRWA, United Nations Refugee Rehabilitation Act or something like that, and also supported by the American Jewish Distribution Committee. And I was maybe in 4 different camps, and so I was there, believe it or not, I was there 6 years, from 1945 to 1951.
Shepa was for
In 1951,
6 years,
I
5
came to
years.
my uncle in Kansas City, Missouri, Izzy Gladstone. And when people ask me where I'm going, and I said 400 East 6th Street, Paris, they said, oh, your uncle must be a rich man. Well, he was a tailor, but he did pretty well, because it was the nicest area in Kansas City, 400 East 63rd Terrace. So let me see. So also, while I was in the DP camp, I took up. I actually have 2 diplomas there. I'll show you later. I attended art school, and I learned how to fix radios. That time television was just in infancy, talking about 1945, 46. Well, anyway, so I learned. So when I came to the United States, I got a job fixing car radios. Now the car radios they used at that time they used to use tubes, and therefore, heat is the can I say is the biggest enemy of any electrical appliance. In that time they used to use tubes instead of transistors, and due to the fact the radio was on the dashboard and it didn't get enough cooling, they used to break down. So we fixed those radios, and then I'm making it short. The story's in between, but I'm making it short. So anyway, then after a year and a half, I said I would like to visit New York City. So the owner said, look, and I say, the reason why I said it is because they gave me a week's vacation with pay. So I said, and then he said, if you do not come, you can take another week without pay. But if you don't come back, after 2 weeks, you lose your job. Well, guess what? I never went back. Never went back, and so then I bought something. I bought a small, how can I say, a small radio shop. It was actually very tiny, and I used to fix car radios. And by the way, that time actually I was I got so this I'm mixing up, So I got so this was 1951. I was in Kansas City in 1952. In 1953, I left for New York. And I lived in a furnished room, and the landlady introduced me to my wife, Gitela. We knew each other 6 weeks, and we got married, and it lasted 43 years until she succumbed to breast cancer. So, but meanwhile, I started to attend City College. And I attended City College at night for 17 years to get my BS in education, BS, my master's, and I have about 60 credits above my master's. And what else?
What did you teach?
Huh?
What was your profession with that degree?
Technology and some math. Obviously, I didn't teach English. So anyway,
you could have.
Anyway, so we have a son. We have two sons and two daughters. Our oldest son, Alan, he lives in Westfield, New Jersey. I think he's now about. Let me see. He got married in 1954. He was born in 1956. How many years? 56. So he's 40.
He's
44,
he's 56.
So he's 56.
He's a year older than me.
He's 56 years old, older than you.
1 year.
1 year. And of course he has a son. Son is a teacher. He teaches in California, not too far from San Francisco. And the daughter's in
What's the son's name?
The son's name is Matthew.
Matthew what? What's the last name?
Kamel.
Kamel.
Like mine.
And what's your son's name again?
Alan. A-L-A-N.
Alan Kamel.
Alan Kamel.
And he lives where?
He lives in Westfield, New Jersey.
Westfield, New Jersey.
Westfield, New Jersey. And I say they have a daughter who's in college.
And what does he do?
He's an attorney.
An attorney.
And his wife is an RN.
Okay.
My youngest son, Perry Kamel, is a physician. Actually, he's assistant professor of medicine. And his wife is obstetrics and gynecology, OBY. And she has a practice, maybe 12 physicians, an envy of Chicago.
Really?
Yeah. Everybody knows. If you would clock in Eleanor Kamel, you would see.
Eleanor.
Elena.
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 And what's your son's name again?
Perry.
Perry. Okay.
Perry.
And he's a doctor. Okay.
And they have twins. They're not in college. Just started the first year college. My grandson was accepted to Northwestern University, which one of the best. And my granddaughter, I forgot the name. Up here, it's a Jewish college. Predominantly Jewish. I don't remember now. But and then they have.
And what are their names? Your grandson and your granddaughter?
My grandson's name is Jonathan, and my granddaughter's name is Leslie. And then they have a son, Aaron, A-A-R-N. All of them, all my grandchildren are A1 students. Then I have a daughter, Lisa. She never got married. She decided, never got married. And then I have my younger daughter.
And where does Lisa live?
Lisa still lives in the Bronx.
Okay. What does she do?
Well, she goes to school and stops. She takes care of elderly people. She cooks for them, something like that.
Okay.
And then, of course, I have a younger daughter. The younger daughter is Julie. And she's an RN. And he's not Jewish. He's an Italian fellow, Edward. And he works for the Board of Education. They have two beautiful kids. I'll show you some pictures. And Julie kind of got married late, and so they have one daughter and just started high school, and I think they have a son. Their son is in the 6th grade or something like that.
And what are their names?
Well, you'll never get it. Okay, his name is Edward Manievichi. Mattpiaccio.
Sounds Italian.
Sounds Italian, very Italian.
That's your daughter's last name then too.
Yeah, Julie
Manievichi.
And two beautiful kids. What can I say? They're very, very happy. But was I 100% happy when they got married? No. But Julia was already about 31 years old, and first of all, I wouldn't take the responsibility and say not to do it, because God forbid if she would never meet anybody else, I would feel terrible. And but they're very, very happy. And as a matter of fact, I asked an Orthodox rabbi, I told him this story. He said, look, let him get married, but let him bring up the children Jewish. Did they? No. They're not Jewish, they're not that, not that. But all our children were actually 2 years apart. So Alan was born in 56, Perry in 58, Lisa in 60, Julie in 62.
Are your kids interested in the history from Manievichi and your history?
Somehow they're not. That's why I give you so much credit. My children are not interested. No.
Well, it's not uncommon. A lot of second generation, I find, they want to move beyond it.